Okay, this is going to be a bit more of a serious video, so I'm not going to put a lot of memes or do as much editing as my usual videos, but I want to talk about mental health during Men's Mental Health Month. I really want to focus on how men usually like cope with it, and me as a neurodivergent man, how I cope with it because I'm in a different spot compared to most men. Personally, I don't think women will understand how we cope with it ever. Because how they cope with it is just different. They kind of feel better about just talking about it, while men usually feel better about taking action about something. That's why we tend to suggest solutions towards a problem instead of just talking about it, which is fine. Men and women's brains are formed differently. That's why there's a female brain, there's a male brain. How we think is different, and how we solve problems is just different, and that's just okay. I think it's just worse to just imply that men and women just think the same and cope the same way. Frankly, if we were to suggest that, that would just make men's mental health worse. And it definitely made my mental health worse. And funny enough, I'm a person that took therapy, not really for emotional regulation. It was to find out that I was neurodivergent. But the questions that I asked in therapy is that how should I go about this? How should I go about life? How should I improve myself in these things socially as someone who is neurodivergent and as a man? Because everybody is just different. So that's how I kind of shaped my therapy session. Someone might have a better, outcome by just talking about it, just talking about, how they feel and about their trauma. While I did talk about my trauma, it didn't really necessarily helped me to regulate my emotions better. And now how men usually cope is that we tend to just take it out physically or just try to solve it. And when I say we want to take it out physically, we don't want to harm anybody. Let me make that clear. Because I think guys usually don't want to put their problems or just kind of say their problems to just bother anybody else. Why would I tell someone to so they can just worry about me? I feel like I'm just being a nuisance at that point. And I don't know if any guy will like feel the same way about it, but you kind of feel like you're holding back your fellow human because you're not solving your own problems. Not necessarily like mentioning them, but the way that you just want to talk about them. If you're trying to suggest for solutions, that kind of comes across as I'm trying to solve my problem, but I need some help. Or that's basically how I see it. And again, men are very, very simple. When we don't want to talk about something, it's not that we want to like hold it in. We just don't want to talk about it in like that particular point, or sometimes ever, which is okay. Whenever they're ready, they're ready. Whenever they're not ready. But sometimes we can just understand each other through our presence. Like for example, my friend who was going through some, mental turmoil and some trouble at the time. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it or wanted me to give out suggestions to help him. And he said that he didn't want to talk about it and he just wanted to just sit down and just kind of take in this moment. So what I did was grab a couple of drinks and just sit down with him. And at that moment, I think we understood more about each other than any conversation could. Because in the funny way, I would appreciate someone if they just didn't dig in deeper and just kind of join me. Again, it's just a very mutual understanding. I feel like a lot of guys will understand this. I think most guys don't want to explain their problems to their girlfriend or kind of give out vulnerability. It's because we'll be seen as weak and a liability. If, for one, we tend to have an emotional outburst considered really just like crying, because socially that's just seen as very weak if a man does it. And also to have these vulnerabilities, you will be seen as a liability, not to your fellow guys necessarily, but I feel like to your partner most of the time, because how are you not solving your own problems? And then you hear stories about women losing attraction and respect for their partners whenever they try to be vulnerable and just try to cry and have these moments with them, even when they said they wanted these moments. One thing that irks me, and I experienced this, is that whenever I try to bring up my problems, because I have tried it, my girlfriend at the time tried to make it about her. And it's just kind of demeaning in a way. I feel like my emotions are just seen as less than, seen as less valuable compared to, my girlfriend's emotions. I think that's a very black pill and kind of red pill moment that I had a lot of time. And those moments also kind of led me to be emotionally detached. And then it's my fault for being emotionally detached. And then the cycle just keeps going and going. And I know it's just a defense mechanism. And hopefully the internet is not being like pedantic about things. Yeah, I know that some women will be okay, will be very supportive if their man is vulnerable. I'm just generalizing here. Funny enough, a lot of the time, women do get with an emotionally detached man, because one, that is just socially like in right now, no emotional vulnerability, and two, he'll be seen as more emotionally intelligent in a way, because he's just hearing her problems. He doesn't bring up his problems. It's just this one-sided exchange. But whenever like he brings up his own problems, then he'll be deemed as very emotional, very vulnerable, weak. They question his masculinity. I think some traits of masculinity are conflated to not being vulnerable. Masculine men can be vulnerable, but they just show it like differently, or just explain their sentiments differently. And stoicism is just also confused with being emotionally detached. Stoicism, in my personal opinion, is a form of high emotional intelligence, because you can be angry about an event that you had either no control over or have somewhat of control over it, but you choose not to act upon that anger. That takes a lot, because in a way, a man who can't control his emotions is very dangerous. Not because of like the emotional outburst itself necessary, that he is still a physical threat. Even the weakest man can still become a physical threat, not just through like their own body, but through other means as well. That's why people take emotional outbursts from men like so seriously. I would too. It's just very logical. Then you also see on TikTok people making fun and demeaning men's mental health because it falls on Pride Month. Granted, I don't really care about Pride Month. It just so happens to fall on the same month as men's mental health. And a lot of these women just keep saying if men really they care about mental health, they'll do something about the SAers. The only rebuttal I can give is that if a man in their immediate family or friends group that they really care about was having trouble with their mental health, or thinking of just disconnecting their controller, I don't think they will ever bring up what would they do about these SAers. Or maybe they would, because I'm just giving them too much credit in a way. And the gender wars don't really help that much as well. Especially when there is so much animosity between us. We keep having these double standards. We keep really dehumanizing on both sides and just relatively hating each other. Now, I still believe that we're just animals. I don't think there's nothing like really genuine about us. That's my personal belief. But this does affect us as social creatures by just going against our true nature. Because in fact, we just need each other. And I understand a lot of these guys want to be single, want to, just joke around saying JBG, take the JBG pill. Funny enough, during the month. And, a lot of girls are just saying that they're happy being single as well. They don't need a man. While I do say it's cope, I think it's mostly a form of protection. You see these videos online that kind of support their claims and even their own experiences going through these stuff. It's reasonable that they want to protect their emotions, their stress levels, and themselves as a person. So that's how I see it. But really, it just lacks understanding for the other side. And in reality, I don't think we will ever understand each other if this keeps going. And in part, women will never understand how we cope with our feelings. And that's okay. Because there will always be someone else that will understand.